Welcome back, friends. Thank you so much for tuning into Rockstar Real Estate Report. We are at episode 4. Wow, almost halfway to 10. How cool is that? Start my timer so we can be mindful of everyone's time. That would be good, right? Last time we were talking about the pre-approval process, and Helena is super knowledgeable, and she's definitely the go-to person for all of that. Even recommending that when you send your bank statements, you need to make sure that every page is covered and all the corners are in there and everything like that, which I did not even know. I mean, I knew about the blank pages and all that stuff, but now that we have our pre-approval in hand, we're going to move on to the fun part, the home search. And here is why the home search comes after the pre-approval. When you find a home you love, again, I just had this conversation about a half hour ago. She was asking me, should I start looking for a home now or talk to a lender? And I said, you need to talk to a lender first. And here's why. Finding a home, living in a home, you wouldn't think so on the surface, but it's a very emotional process. There are a lot of emotions involved with it. And just think about, okay, I think in pictures, think about you see this house come on the market, looks great, has an open house over the weekend, and you guys scoot to the open house. And you love this house and you want to buy this house. Guess what? You can't. You know why? Because you don't have your pre-approval. You have to have a pre-approval in order to buy.
That's a big disappointment, right?
You're a willing buyer. And how terrible would you feel if you fall in love with this house and you are not ready to buy it and you lose it to someone else? That is a terrible feeling, my friend. And I don't want you to have those terrible feelings. So we get the pre-approval before we do the home search.
Not only terrible feeling that you might not be ready and you might lose it, but God forbid you fall in love with it and then it's way outside of your budget.
Right.
And that happens all the time.
And on the rare occasion, you have the reverse problem. You hinder yourself from going too far, and then you find out later that you could have found maybe a little bigger house with a yard and a little bit more money because you can't afford it, but you didn't realize, and you shortchanged yourself.
Yep.
That's what the pre-approval is for. It gives you your legitimate real life budget with that you have to work with. And it may or may not be the numbers you want to hear, but it is your reality. And when it's your reality, sorry, I had a piece of hair on my chin. When you get your real numbers, it's really good to know. It's really good to know moving forward. And then we can start searching for a home.
And Julie, when someone comes to you and they're not pre-approved, I mean, how do you educate them that that really is the most important step before you even take the time to go somewhere, and then they potentially are disappointed?
That's challenging sometimes because I don't want to discourage anyone, of course. However, I am self-employed. I have to guard my time. I don't get paid by the hour. And so when I take someone to show a home, that's me utilizing my time to invest in your future home purchase, to invest in you buying that home and helping you along that process. So I have to be very careful. On occasion, I will do it a couple of times so that someone can get an idea of the reality of what you can get for a particular price in a particular market, if that makes sense. But typically, I don't like to show properties without a pre-approval for just what was talked about before, because I really wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I took someone to see a home and they just thought, this is my dream home, this is it. They totally fall in love with it. And they can't buy it. That would make me feel terrible. And I don't want to feel terrible, and I don't want you to feel terrible.
No, I agree. I agree. It's an emotional process. No matter how you put it, it's an emotional process from beginning to end. It's just.
It is. And in this current market that we have, we're in a market with very, very low inventory. And if you go back to the basics of supply and demand, that's really what it's about right now. There's very little supply and very high demand. So it is a competitive buyer's market. And it definitely requires perseverance. It definitely requires you being patient with the process, with yourself, with properties, with other agents, with other people. It is kind of a daunting process, but in the end, it is 1,000% worth it, right? But you do have to have perseverance and determination are really, really good words to attach to the home buying process right now. But it's all worth it. It really is. I know it's hard at times, and especially if you're a first-time home buyer in that price point, it can be challenging because there are a lot of first-time home buyers out there. There really are. But you know what? And I know this sounds kind of crazy and maybe a little woo-woo, and that's okay if you don't like it. But I really, truly, in my heart of heart, believes that everything happens when it's supposed to.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. We've seen it happen over and over again over the years in the industry, without a doubt.
100%. So do you guys have any other input about the home search process?
I guess my question would be, managing people's expectations with what they can get for their budget and, trying to come up with an idea of, well, you can't have a 4,000 square foot home for, whatever price. And maybe you can't have 4 bedrooms. Maybe you should be looking at 3. How do you manage the expectations of what people's, must have, need to have, how do you
Right.
manage that?
One of the tools that I use is I have a document that I send to people. It's a home wish list. And encompassed in that wish list are things like needs, wants, extras, things that are, I'm trying to think of how people say it sometimes, non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like a pool for some people is a non-negotiable. They have to have it. But stuff like that. And to some extent, I can't always manage those expectations.
Mhm.
Sometimes it just comes with the process, because even though this is what I do full time every day, more than full time, not everyone believes what I say. And some people have to gain that knowledge by actually walking through it and going
Mhm.
to those open houses, going to those showings and realizing that this is beyond me. Or to Helena's point, oh, I can get more than this.
Mhm.
Sometimes it just comes with experience. And if I can, I will try to save clients that disappointment and grief, but it's not always possible, unfortunately. We can only mitigate what we're allowed to mitigate,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
So with that being said, Julian, and I love how you absolutely guide, the clients to the best outcomes possible with the properties and the best expectations and reasonable needs and wants, and how you discuss that. But does that conversation change depending on whether you have a buyer who's currently renting versus a buyer who's selling to buy?
Yeah, I would say yes. Because I think someone who is selling and then buying something smaller or larger, I think they're probably more in tune with what they need and want. And I think their expectations, for the most part, would be a little more realistic than someone who's been renting and doesn't really understand the market.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
I-
One of the things that I've mentioned, and I think we've talked about it before as well, is when they've had conversations during the pre-approval process and setting the budget in place, is when you're comparing the benefit of, you know, renting versus buying, realistic expectations, affordability, space, square footage, things like that. Sometimes it is good to have that conversation with you, with me, you know, just to kind of set the right mindset so that they're not kind of going outside of the reality versus, and they're not disappointing themselves as well, that they're not saying, oh, well, if I can't go from 0 to 60, then I can't, but that's not really true. And you have that great conversation with them.
This is awesome. And actually, I would like to continue this conversation in the next episode, if you don't mind, because I have a couple questions for you, Helena.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you again for joining us for the Rockstar Real Estate Report. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Helena. Thank you, Megan. You guys are just absolutely the best, and I really appreciate you. And we appreciate you friends watching, and we appreciate you subscribing and sharing and telling people about us. And, you know, throw your questions at us. Let us know what you want to know about. Let us know what you don't understand. We would love to pull those things apart for you and deconstruct and define and help you understand. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, guys. See you on the next episode.
all right, sorry, I'm having a little,
She's gonna shut us down.
there we go.